Hi, I'm Denise Watt, and today is January 11th, 2018, and I am sitting down with Jared Kowalski. He's the son of Jerome Kowalski, who was sentenced to life in prison for a double murder, his brother and wife. And we haven't really heard a lot from Jared. And any of you that have been following this case with that has to do with Judge Teresa Brennan, I think that you'll all be interested in hearing what Jared has to say. You know, it's his father that's in prison. So, Jared, thanks a lot for sitting down.
Thank you for having me.
And why don't you start like a little bit from the beginning? What happened?
Well, it was May 1st of 2008. It was late.
So it was 10 years ago already.
It'll be 10 years this May.
Wow.
10 years. I've received a phone call from my father, and he said he was informed by somebody in our family that they saw on the news, and this is at 10:30 at night, that his brother, my uncle, and my aunt were found murdered.
And the murder took place in Howell, correct?
That is correct, yes. Later that night, my father, who is an alcoholic and was drinking, had a knock on his door, and it was the police. They came knocking at his door. They came there to inform him of the murders, but informing him turned into about an hour and a half at his house late at night, 11:30 at night, and after he's been drinking. While they were there, they were acting cordial towards him and asking him, how close he was to his brother. And my dad's like, well, I talked to him, and we're not super close, but we've talked. And they asked him, when was the last time you were at his house? And he's like, well, I haven't been there in 10 years.
And so what made them go to your father's house that quickly?
Well, they were trying to, they told actually wasn't quickly, Denise. It was the bodies of my uncle and aunt were found around 2 o'clock, or a little bit after 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and this is now 11:30 at night. And my dad kind of expressed his feelings on, why am I hearing about this, my brother hours later after finding them murdered? Why am I hearing this now? He says, I find out from my cousin on the news that they were, killed, and then now you're coming to my house at 11:30 to inform me. Why so late? So he was kind of, dumbfounded why this is happening now. So, so it really wasn't that quick. But they, they claimed they came to his house to inform him about his brother's death, and they said, we're sorry, we didn't have your information, and they were trying to find it. So while they were there, they were asking him, when was the last time?
And what police came there?
It was the state police detectives. And it was, all written down on paper that who came there. I don't recall the actual detectives that were there that night, but
Was Furlong there?
Detective Furlong was not there that night.
Okay.
But they, they were asking my dad, when was the last time you were at your brother's house? And he's like, oh, I haven't been there in like 10 years. And they asked him, are we going to find any hair follicles of yours at the house, or DNA or fingerprints? And my dad's like, no, absolutely not. Like I said, I haven't been there in 10 years. Are you sure, Jerry? And he's like, well, yeah, it's been so long ago. And then they wanted to know where he was the night before, and my dad's like, well, I worked at the base. He was a security guard. He was retired, but he worked part-time as a security guard at Selfridge Air National Guard Base. And he worked a midnight shift. And then he said the day before, I went to Walmart, and they says, well, do you have proof of that? He's like, well, yeah. And do you have receipts? And he says, yeah, I have receipts. I bought a lawnmower. So he brings them in the house, and he gives them receipts. This is where my dad probably should have said, whoa. But my family has never been in trouble with the law. We're, never had to encounter anything like this. And my dad was, he had in his mind that the police, they're there to serve and protect, which we still believe.
Yeah.
But, going through what we've gone through.
He was probably really upset, too. I mean, he just found out his brother's
right, and he's
dead.
And he's got nothing to hide. He said, well, yeah, I was at the store. Here's my receipts. And they says, Jerome, do you own a gun? And he's like, well, yeah, I own a gun. And he's like, yeah, I own a 9mm. It's, where is it, Jerome? He's like, well, it's upstairs under my pillow. Can we get it? Well, yeah. So he takes them up there, and he gives them their gun. And, they go, well, we're just going to go through protocol. We're going to take the gun. We just want to rule this out and, rule you out. And we're going to take this gun. Mm-hmm. My dad's like, oh, okay, whatever. And then they said, are you still sure we're not going to find any DNA of yours out there? He's like, no. So this was like, I know I said that pretty quick, but this is an hour and a half.
All right.
As they left, my dad continues to drink. And he's starting to question himself, like, why did they take my receipts? Why did they take my gun? That was odd. Why did they ask me so many questions? DNA, hair follicles. He started getting confused, like, why? So the following day, we get together as a family to talk about what happened. I mean, we're in shock and tragedy. And we wanted to be together as a family, so my dad and I and my brother, our whole family got together at my brother's house. And the only form of information we were getting was from the news. We didn't have any communication with the police. We had no information. We didn't know what was going on. So we didn't have any contact with my other side of the family, which would have been my aunts. We were confused, so the only information was the news, and we're trying to figure out, do they have any suspects? How come no one's under arrest? What's going on? And then, so we were together as a family.
Yeah, and why were they even murdered?
Why were they murdered? We kept questioning, why? Who could have done this? And my dad, my mom, everybody, we were all together, and just questioning who could have done this. The next day, that was Friday night. The next day was Saturday, and we said, there's no new news. Do we all want to come together? We need to be together as a family. So the next day, my father comes out, my mom comes out, my brother, we all get together at my house. And we were saying that we needed to contact the other side of the family and kind of, we need to help out with a funeral. We need to represent my uncle's side of the family. So we said we need to reach out to the other side of the family if we can help out with the funeral and represent my uncle. And so when my dad was over, he says, you're right. We wanted to do a military funeral in honor of my uncle who served in the Marines. And so we wanted to help in any way we can with that. And so my dad was at my house, and he called. He called the other side of the family. Well, who picked up was another person on that side of the family who relayed some information to my dad. And so he basically, that person told my dad, because they were at that side, how the bodies were found, because they talked to the person that found them, just kind of talked to them about how the bodies were found in the house, according to what we knew of the house. And we were at my uncle's house, and like my dad said, it was about 10 years ago at that time, which is correct. It was about 10 years ago. And we remembered to the T. So my dad hung up. He kind of told us where the bodies were, and we were told here and there, and so we're like, oh yeah, we remember being over at my uncle's house. Then, my uncle was probably at the end of the hallway. We probably greeting the person coming in the house, if his body was there, and we were told that my aunt was in another part of the house, and we're like, oh, well, if she was there, then, that's where she had a microwave, and she used to smoke there when we were there 10 years ago. She used to stand in this area and smoke, and that's where her body was. So we're thinking she must have been smoking there. So, we're kind of like role-playing, like, who would have came in, and why is my uncle there, and, why is my aunt over there? So after that night, my dad goes home, and, now that he's sober, he's been sober for 10 years, and clear-minded, great to talk to now, and he tells us, he's like, I went home, and I'm having this all on my mind. Why did the police take my gun? Why did they take my receipts? Why aren't there suspects?
Yeah.
And then now he starts thinking about, why the body's there, and he starts to, he goes home and drinks some more, and he starts questioning himself, and he starts thinking, did I do this? Why are, and I forgot to mention that the police called him again and said, we'd like for you to come out on Monday. We have some more questions. So he's like, why are they calling me again? I already gave them what I knew. Now they want me to come back in. And then, they got my receipts and gun. They want me to come back in. And then he starts thinking about how we were talking about the bodies in the house. So he drinks again. He has, he falls asleep. He's thinking. It's like marinating on his mind. And, he's thinking, did I do this? But so he gets confused. He goes to sleep. And he ultimately, basically, like he's in that half, dreamy, half sleeping phase.
Yeah.
And he thinks, maybe I did do this. I don't know. And he's really confused with himself now in the whole situation. It's Sunday now. And we asked if we wanted to get together. He says, no, I'll be fine. But my mom went over. They're divorced, but they're friends.
Yeah.
My mom went over to see if he was okay.
Right.
And they went out to lunch together, and she said my dad was fine that day. He was upset,
Well, yeah.
but not like he felt good about going out to lunch and talking it over with my mom. And then Monday, we were going out to help with funeral arrangements. We heard that my uncle and aunt were arriving to the funeral home, and we wanted to represent my uncle and his side. So we're driving out to Livingston or to Howell to the funeral home, and we heard from someone else, another uncle of ours. Whatever you do, do not bring up a funeral. That side of the family does not want a funeral or anything to do with a military funeral. They want, they were going to get upset. Don't mention anything. So being the passive person my dad is, non-confrontational, he's like, we got all the way out to Howell, and he's like, and we live he lives a good hour and a half. I live about 45 minutes. And he said, you know what, I don't want to deal with that. Let's just turn around and go back. So that's what I did. We got in the parking lot of the funeral home,
Wow.
and we turned around and started heading back. And then on our way back, he started saying, yeah, the police called me again, and they want me to come in for more questioning. And being as naive as we were back then, we're like, oh, well, they probably just want to give you your gun back. We can just pull up and drop you off and, get your gun or whatever they need to do, and we'll leave. He's like, well, yeah, that's what, basically that's probably what it is, but I'm going to go back and let the dog out and then come back out here. And we thought that was kind of strange, like why he would do something, like why would you just drop him off right then and there, but we're like, whatever. So later that evening, I tried calling my dad, and he didn't answer. And the next day was Tuesday, and I tried calling him in the morning on my way to work, and he didn't answer right away. So I was kind of concerned, and then I called him at 9 o'clock on a break that I had at work, and he answered. I said, Dad, did you go to the police yesterday? How did it go? He goes, oh, I'm there now. And I'm like, oh, I thought you were going last night. He goes, oh, I was going to, but I didn't. He goes, but I'm here today. Okay. Everything all right? Yeah, everything's fine. Okay. Hung up. I call him on my lunch hour. He goes, yeah, I'm still here. I'm like, you're still there? It's, 9 o'clock, 12, that's a couple hours. He goes, yeah, it's okay. But I'm here. I'm talking with the police. I'm thinking, wow, that's a long time. Get a call from my mom, and she said, I stopped by to see how your dad was. He wasn't home. I heard the dog barking, maybe, and your dad's not home. He's, and I says, well, he's out by the police, so I guess I should stop by and let the dog out. It was not that far from work. But at the time, we thought my dad was done drinking. We worked many years with my dad with quitting drinking, my brother and I. That was a huge thing. And he was sober, so we thought, for so many years. We found out that he wasn't. He was hiding it a lot. But, I says, he's acting kind of weird. I'm going to go see if he's, when I let the dog out, I'm going to do some investigation myself, see if there's any liquor bottles.
Right.
So I let the dog out and go inside. I'm kind of looking around to see if there's liquor bottles, and I see a note on a table, on a table. And I pick it up, and the note says, I think I may have killed Rick and Brenda. I have no recollection of driving out there. It's, I don't know how I would have gotten out there. I'm not sure. I might have blacked out. I'm so sorry if I did this. And at the initial moment of finding this, I just broke down and cried. I was shaking. I didn't know how to handle this. You see a note like that.
And why would he do it anyway?
Right. There's no reason to. My father's that kind of person. He's not that kind of person.
Yeah.
And at the initial moment, I'm like, I was confused and scared, and I didn't know what to do. I could, so I just grabbed the dog, threw the dog in my car. I drove to my brother's house, and I called my brother and my wife. We get out to the house. I explained the note, We're all crying, but we kept reading those words. I think I may have. I have no recollection of driving out there. It might have been a blackout. I don't know how I would have gotten out there. I may have. So there's all these, it's confusion in this letter.
Yeah.
And words were spelled wrong, so you could, looking at it, you can tell he was drunk.
While he was writing it.
Writing it, right. But it's, we kept saying, he didn't do this. He's confused because we know the kind of guy my dad is. He's not a cold blood killer. He didn't have a temper. He's very passive, a very non-confrontational person. And,
And he didn't have a fight going on with his brother, did he?
So, that's an interesting question. And so he had, my uncle had a little confrontation with me, I don't know, 8 years ago at that time.
Right.
At that time. So 2002. And it was over something like I had my old car at my grandma's house. They were trying to sell my grandma's house. And I looked out to my uncle. My uncle, he did everything in his life that I wanted to do. I mean, I looked up to him. And he calls me and he said these really nasty words to me that I never heard spoke from my uncle. And it was struck like a knife to the heart. It really hurt me. And I threw the phone down, I cried, and my dad was there, and so was my brother. My dad's like, what's going on? And he says, Uncle Rick said these things to me. And, if that was my son, and someone told that to my son, I would have been on that phone, calling my brother up and yelling at him, and what gives you the right? But my dad's a very non-confrontational person, very passive, and he's just not like that. It's not in him. What did my dad do? He walked away. He was, I can't believe he said that. My brother was the one that picked up the phone and called my uncle.
Oh, did he?
So there was a falling out.
Okay.
Did
really not really between them.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't like we still show up at family functions and holidays, Christmas, Easter. We still got together, but my uncle would be in a room and my dad would go in the other room. It wasn't like they wouldn't argue and fight. And you can ask anybody in the family. Yeah, everybody knew that they didn't get along. But they knew there was never, my dad's just that kind of person. And we had a family friend that, one time our family friend, the neighbor, and my dad and him were out drinking at the house. And my uncle, this is after and my uncle said those things. And my uncle pulls up. And what did my dad do? He ran away. He went in the other room. He went and hid, basically like a little kid. Yeah. So, that's just the kind of person my dad is. And I'm not like that, but my dad is.
Yeah.
And, so hearing these things that my dad's a cold-blooded killer and he would do this to his brother is not in my dad's DNA. Absolutely not. So, reading this letter, or this small note that my dad wrote, it hurt. But I knew, I had to turn this in. I couldn't physically do it. I knew I gave it to my dad's cousin. She turned it in because, it just hurt. But I knew it was evidence or whatever this may be.
Right.
I couldn't withhold that, even though I felt that it's not my dad.
Yeah.
But I so she turned it into the police, and they took that letter from us. And so my dad's, being in the meantime, he's being now investigated by the police at the station, the Brighton Post. And now we're learning what really happened at the Brighton Post with, Detective Furlong was there and talking to my father, who ultimately gets my dad to confess to the crime. When my dad initially goes in for questioning that morning, he tells the police, they ask him, where were you, the same questions, and, did you kill him? He says, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not, he says. And then they kind of question him some more, and they kind of ask him, when was the last time, when was the last time you were out there? So my dad basically is telling him, no, and they ask him, Jerome, are you under the influence of drugs and alcohol? Well, I learned that night, Monday night, that when he went home to let the dog out and he was supposed to come back to the police station, he went home and he tried to commit suicide, and it hurts me to say that. But I'm a true believer in the Lord, and and the Lord made him wake up the next morning, and said, Jerome, you didn't do this. You need to go in And, that God works in mysterious ways. And
Yes,
unfortunately, my dad's been in jail for 10 years. It's going to be 10 years. But my dad is clean of alcohol. He was a heavy smoker. He wasn't clear-minded to talk to back then. You can have a great conversation with him now. And even when he was in Livingston County Jail, when he was found guilty and he went to prison, they didn't lock him up there. They had a going away party where the nurses came, the priests, the pastor, and the guards. They had a going away pizza party and cake for my dad to say goodbye to him, and they were upset to see him leave. They were like, he's just like another guard.
So they really liked him.
They really liked him, and
Yeah.
we go visit him, and we say, "Oh, you're the son. We hope you have a good lawyer because we all think he's innocent." Because
Wow.
and so I mean, it just knowing the kind of person my dad is, it really hurts to see him where he's at. He's missed so much.
Yes.
He wasn't there for my wedding. He wasn't there to see the birth of his grandkids, or at least my granddaughters. His granddaughters,
Yeah.
sorry, his granddaughters.
I know what you meant.
Thank you. And then and he's had a lot of family friends that have passed away.
Yeah.
And the last people to talk to him or come see him. And
So this has been 10 years now, right? That he's been in jail or prison.
May 6, 2018, which is this May 6th, will be 10 years. So May 6th of 2008, he was put under arrest.
Okay.
So he's been in jail, and it was while he was in jail. He was in jail for 5 years
In the Livingston County Jail.
in the Livingston County Jail.
That's a long time.
It's a long time, especially with the Constitution. The Fifth Amendment says the right to a speedy trial, and he sat in jail for 5 years. So the one thing I want to get to is they're saying that my dad did this at that time frame on April 30th between the hours of 4 and 6 o'clock. So they're saying that he was able to basically commit the perfect crime, and what I mean by that is there's no DNA, nothing of my father tying him to that scene.
No murder weapon.
No murder weapon.
3-day death time.
Right. And they're saying that he was able to do it in that time frame and then drive out to work and clean off his clothes and go to work. And that's what they went with. And the whole trial, and when we talk about the trial, but the whole trial, we had the prosecutor Pam Moss objecting to everything as we were trying to educate the jury, and she kept saying, "Oh, that's hearsay, that's speculation." But you know what? Their whole case is hearsay and speculation because her whole closing arguments was like, she says, "You know where the gun is? It's buried in a lake somewhere. You know where his clothes are? Buried in a lake." That's speculation. That's nothing on my dad.
So how was Judge Brennan during the trial? Was she respectful to the prosecutor and, in defer long? I mean, how was her demeanor in the court?
So what's interesting about that is Detective Furlong was in the ear of Pamela Moss, the assistant prosecutor, for the majority of the trial. He would, pipe in her ear and talk. And my dad's defense attorney said he's never seen so many objections in a case by Pam Moss objected so many times as we're trying to educate the jury, and he says, and not alone the objections granted by the judge. The majority of them were sustained.
Well, and she refused to allow the false confession expert in to the trial too, right?
Yeah, so my father was trying to, we and my dad's the lawyer, they were trying to build a defense for him. We were trying to show, he worked the night shift. There's no way he could have done this at either time frame. And the one major thing, so leading up to the trial, Judge Brennan denied 2 experts to testify on my father's behalf.
Which the experts were.
Yes, there was a Dr. Leo from California. He's a false confession expert who's been on many cases around the country, and it's basically educating the jury on false confessions and why people who are innocent would confess to a crime they didn't do based on police tactics, based on police interrogations. Then we also wanted to talk about my dad's state of mind. He's an alcoholic. He's confused in what kind of personality does he have. He's influenced by people of power and, respect to the police. And he's just, if they're telling me I did this, well, then, they're the police. They know, I must have done this. So just to educate the jury on what kind of personality my dad had. And she barred those two from testifying on my father's behalf. And, that's basically the only defense we had for my dad. And there's one other person, was Dr. Werner Spitz. He's a renowned medical examiner he's done over 60,000 autopsies. He's done, Elvis Presley and
so
John F. Kennedy's.
Who called him in?
We did. Our family, we did. And he says, we need a time of death. We need an alibi to work with. And so we called him. We met with him. We met in his office. Wonderful man, very knowledgeable. So we paid him to go through all the files, to go through everything, all the documentation was taken at the scene. And he came up with a time of death of 2:30 to 4:30 a.m. Anywhere, give or take, but he says definitely in the middle of the night. And we're like, whoa.
On one of those, on a certain day, though?
I'm sorry, on May 1st. So in the night of April 30th and leading to the night of May 1st.
Okay.
So 2:30 a.m. May 1st to 4:30 a.m. May 1st, give or take.
Is what he thought
was the
time of death.
Was the time of death.
And he was able to give that
Yes,
testimony?
he gave that testimony, and he gave the reasons, cadaveric spasm and potassium, every end of the eyes. He gave that, and Pamela Moss, she I hate to admit it, but she played a great game of manipulating the minds of the jury. She was right next to the jury, and arms up. Oh my gosh, can you believe this? And she tried to make Dr. Werner Spitz look like a senile old man on stand. She kept, coming at him and questioning on certain pages. And he says, look, I wrote the book on forensic pathology. I have it right here. But you have a young jury, people that I think the jury had my dad convicted at the beginning of the trial. I mean, I know they had a little to work with what we were trying to get out because Pam Moss would object so much. But they had my father convicted. They're like, well, they couldn't get over the fact that an innocent man would confess. Why would an innocent man confess? And I'll admit, I was in that same boat before this. I would have been the same way. But that's why we wanted an expert to educate why a man that's innocent would confess. And it's... people need to realize, this is the Innocence Project, and this just came out this year. It's 25 years of the Innocence Project, and, educate yourself on, this is a real thing, innocence, the fight against wrongful convictions, based on police interrogations. And you know what we've dealt with, it's going on in Livingston County. It's sad to say, and I hate that, to say that, but it is, and it's everything we're dealing with. And this is a serious issue and people need to educate them. And I was the same way. I did not believe if someone's like that, they're going to confess. They must be guilty. But it's a real thing. And knowing what we know today, when I hear something on the news, I don't jump to conclusions. I want to hear the facts. I want to hear everything because of what we've been dealing with.
Well, everything that's come out, since Judge Brennan's divorce, Tom Kaiser has... brought up many points about perjury and the phone calls between him and her before the trial, after the trial, the affair. It's sort of like plain to see that your dad didn't get a fair trial.
He did not get a fair trial, and it all began with Judge Brennan denying the two experts from testifying, the false confession expert and the psychologist.
So Jared, it's... with all the stuff that we've seen, all the information that's been out there, if nothing else, it seems like your dad at least deserves a new trial, a fair trial. Like he didn't get the fair trial.
No, absolutely he did not, and he deserves a fair trial. The main thing, too, is, building my dad's defense. My dad's attorney wanted to get the false confession expert and a psychologist, and we had talked about that. Judge Brennan denied those two experts. She said basically that he's an unreliable source, the false confession expert, and since we're not going to use him, and then there's no need for the psychologist. And we're thinking, we're upset. Okay, I kind of see maybe your thought on the false confession expert, but on a case this large, how do you deny a psychologist? So that decision went to the Court of Appeals, to allow these people. The Court of Appeals basically, just passed it along to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, basically in layman's terms, they basically said, well, Judge Brennan didn't abuse her power by ruling this way. However, this and that. So they basically put it back on Judge Brennan to reconsider her thoughts, but give a ruling. So I feel like she kind of saved face, and she still denied the expert of false confessions. She denied him.
Yeah, because without that, they really didn't have a case, did
No, they had absolutely nothing. And she did allow the psychologist, and I'll get to that. It gets interesting. So no, they didn't have a case. They didn't have a case at all, because Furlong is the one that's in my dad pounding the table, and they eventually get my dad to sign a note saying yes, he did it. Furlong, after he's in my dad's face, so Furlong's the one that get the confession, the true confession from my dad, and she denied the false confession expert, and now knowing what we know about Judge Brennan and Detective Furlong, well, shoot, she's looking out for him, and now you have Furlong in the ear of Pam Muss during the trial, objection, Your Honor, and she's sustaining many of their, it was not fair.
No, it wasn't fair, and so. And
if you don't mind, since you asked that, Denise, about a fair trial, and I'm getting to the psychologist, and I said I'd get to the psychologist.
Okay.
What's interesting about that is that the psychologist, I have a bunch of papers here. The Innocence Project of New York was following this. A lot of people have been following this.
Another country even picked up this story.
Japan. I've been interviewed with Japan. Japan has been following this. They had Judge Brennan's face all over the video and Furlong. And they interviewed myself and WXYZ.
Yes, and the piece that you sent me was from.
Yeah, it was from Crime Watch Daily.
Yeah, that was very very good.
Please, everybody out there, if you can, Google, Jerome Kowalski and Crime Watch Daily. They aired it in June 6th of 2017, and they really did a great job of focusing the attention.
It was really, really informational and made you really think different. If you were on the fence,
right,
after watching that. Yeah.
Yes. So the interesting fact that I want to talk about is that Judge Brennan, who did allow the testimony of Dr. Wendt, who's the psychologist, it's his turn. It was, I remember, January 17th, 2013. He's finally on stand. So now he's going to give his testimony, and this is our only defense, basically, of my dad's psychological and his, well-being and his, demeanor.
Yeah,
sound mind. So he's up there, and Judge Brennan interrupts right away, and she
interrupts this witness.
This witness.
For you guys.
For my father, yes. And she says, I'm going to try time things out here. It's almost 4:30, and I'm stopping at 5, and I have it right here. And she says,
those are the transcripts.
That's the transcripts from the trial.
Yeah.
She says she's going to stop because she needs to catch a plane. So there's a lot of frantic going on between my dad's attorney, and he wants to get she wants to stop at 5. We got a lot to talk about my dad's state of mind, and it's 4:30. And she's rude. She says, I don't care. I told you at the beginning, I'm stopping at 5, I'm stopping at 5. So now my dad's attorney is trying to say, well, Your Honor, Judge, we need to figure out how to get him out here Tuesday. And then now this man is getting nervous. He's like, well, I have a family vacation. I can't come. I'm leaving Sunday. I can't come on a Tuesday. And, because this was the weekend, this weekend of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., weekend. And so she wasn't going to, this was a Thursday night. She was going on vacation from Friday to Monday, and we didn't know where at the time. And she said, I had to stop, catch a plane. I don't care. So we can't, now my dad's attorney is getting nervous. He can't bring this.
Plus who is he?
doctor went to psychologist.
Yeah, the psychologist now is a little nervous because now he's got to try and hurry up and say what he's got to say.
Because
it makes him nervous.
Yes, because he's got a trip to Disney World with his kids, and he says, I can't come back here. I got this plan. So my dad's attorney is rushing through things, and at this point, the jury is basically not even hearing what's going on. And my dad's attorney gets flustered, and he's like, you know what, Honor, we got it. I'll end there. And so it was very vague testimony. So right there, was that fair? Absolutely not. Now, where she went,
he should have been able to take his time.
He should have been able to take his time.
Tell everything that he thought, in his opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, with that said, the very interesting thing that we find out about that, I found out that, sorry, I'm trying to go through my notes here.
Oh, that's okay.
So here you go.
Getting ready to take a plane.
She was ready to take a plane.
To go to?
We don't know yet. We didn't know at the time, but I've heard through deposition that she took this past year that she was going to Washington, D.C. And who she went with, we were told that she went with girlfriends to Washington, D.C. that same weekend. So she rushes the testimony of the psychologist to go out on the plane to go to Washington, D.C. Well, we had this article here stating that she went to that she had an affair.
And that's from where? WHMI?
WHMI, yeah, with Alan Phillip, the chief staff of Congressman Mike Bishop, and they were staying at a condo or somewhere, renting out a place, or he was, in D.C., in Washington, D.C. And of course, Kelly Bishop, the Congressman Bishop's spokesperson, said, well, no tax dollars have been used, for that hotel. But in August 13th, 2015, this article was out, and it says, Mike Bishop blows off paying staffers rent with tax dollars, says it's fully allowed. So, they did use tax dollars to have this lodging for Alan Phillip, who Brennan had an affair with. Now, it'd be nice to know, was it during that time of the trial, and is that who she was going to see in Washington, D.C.? Was she having an affair with Phillip at this time of the affair? So regardless, she still interrupted the testimony of the psychologist.
She had to get to Washington.
She had to get to Washington, D.C. And is she going with Mike Bishop's staffer, Alan Phillip? I don't know. But it is true that they
hold
were...
Hold that up. So people, they can zoom in on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is all out there. This is all...
Yeah, this is all out there.
this is on WHMI's
Yeah.
website, right?
Yes. WHMI had it up there on their website, and I saved it. I took I saved it on my file, so I can always
Right.
have it, because sometimes they come down, and this,
Yeah, that's true.
yeah.
Okay.
So that was I thought was interesting. So it'd be interesting to find out, is that who she went out to? But it really doesn't matter. She still stopped the testimony of the psychologist. So no
Right.
fair trial for my father.
Right. And so when you, through this whole thing, and your dad gets found guilty and all that and sent to prison in 2013, you guys were probably all going crazy, thinking, how are we going to get my dad out? And then the divorce hits. You guys must have been so happy when some of this started coming out. The phone records, Furlong and her speaking before, during, and after.
I believe it was February 2nd, Friday night, that I got the call from my mother-in-law, and it was like I work nonstop, phone calls, and I will not stop until I prove my father innocent. Now, again, I'm not here to make everyone think, I mean, it's good for people to understand our side of the story and get that out there, but I also want to get people to understand the corruption that's going on in Livingston County. And I think one of the biggest thing, hey, it's been a tagline we've heard all along with the election. It's drain the swamp in D.C. I think it's time to drain the swamp in Livingston County. I think, and maybe even Michigan. I think there's a lot of collusion going on, and and corruption. And I would like to also question, Bill Vaillancourt. Bill Vaillancourt has the obligation as the county prosecutor to grant my father a new trial. I mean, it's perjury. It's there. It's in black and white.
Right.
And the fact that he hasn't, granted a new trial based on what's out there is absurd.
Well, why do you think he's taken no action?
And that's a good question. That's, I think he wants to sweep it on the rug. I think he wants another entity to take over, whether it's the Judicial Tenure Commission or it's the Attorney General, Bill Schuette, which I have some information on too. And, is maybe Brennan, there was a comment, in my files that people have said, there's a lot of backdoor deals. This is from another attorney, and he wrote a comment on livingstondaily.com that there's a lot of backdoor deals going on between Vaillancourt and Brennan. Is that true? It's hearsay, but the point is people are starting to open their eyes. And, Bill Vaillancourt, he might be a nice guy. He's involved in a lot. I know he's part of part of PAM, which is the Prosecutors Association of Michigan. It's about having integrity as understanding the laws of being a prosecutor and upholding the integrity of the office. Really, upholding the integrity of the office. Well, I cannot say enough about Mr. Kaiser. He's a pit bull. He understands.
Well, he used to be a prosecutor. He's like a well-respected attorney in this community for years and years, and he brought this whole thing up when the trial started, that Brennan should have recused herself back then, which just all
that's where I was getting at. And then thank you for bringing it up. I was going to get to that, and in my file. So, one of the things that, Bill Vaillancourt, when he ran for re-election, he ran on the, he fought and won for the people versus Jerome Kowalski. That was his biggest case that he ran on. Really, Mr. Vaillancourt, you ran on that without any DNA, any physical evidence, nothing on my dad, no time of death. That's your biggest case. You had a medical examiner 3 days. That came up with a time of death of 3 days. And, that's what he ran on. And, he talks about being a tough prosecutor. I think it's a lot of bullying going on within the inside his office and in the people. I've talked to a lot. Here's that letter, okay? Before I get to the letter, let me read some comments that were by Prosecutor Bill Vaillancourt. People ask, why haven't you been commenting on Brennan, and what's the investigation going on? And and he states, and this is a statement from him, an email statement, carefully written, like a true politician. In early February of this year, I learned of these allegations from the pleadings that were filed in court within the civil divorce case. I immediately brought it to the attention of both the Michigan State Police and the Judicial Tenure Commission to conduct an investigation as to the nature of any relationship between the judge and the detective before and during the trial. Okay? So, with that said, Mr. Vaillancourt, you're saying that you just learned about this in February of 2017. Well, Mr. Vaillancourt, you were given a copy of by Mr. Tom Kaiser, and that was January 4th of 2013, and it is to Mr. Vaillancourt, William Vaillancourt. So it's addressed to you in your office, and it talks about there's Teresa Brennan having a relationship with two police officers on this case of Jerome Kowalski. The officers are Furlong, and the other one was Corville. That she had quote-unquote relations. And Mr. Kaiser, in this letter of 2013, strongly suggests that there should be an investigation, or that Brennan should recuse herself. So back then, he could have handled it. There would have been nothing if he just would have had her recuse herself.
Right, and I'm sure it would have all turned out a lot different if that would have happened. Don't you think?
It would have turned out different. And unfortunately, it would have been bad for us because we have a lot going on other than just this divorce to prove my dad's innocence. But it would have been a lot harder to bring this out to the public. And this, so in hindsight, I like to thank Mr. Vaillancourt for maybe not even bring this up in 2013, even though he likes to say that he just learned about it in February 2000.
Well, Tom Kaiser wrote a letter, contradicting that whole point with him.
I did read that. I read that online.
Yeah, so this all started in 2008.
Yep.
It's now 2018.
Oh. And then he said, well, and I like the, sorry, one more thing I like to say about him. He says, the allegations are deeply disturbing about, Teresa Brennan. Obviously, if I knew what I know now, I would not have supported the judge for re-election. So if you didn't know what you know now, this was in, your comments this summer. I'm sorry, that you made these comments this summer, July of 2017. And he says, if I knew what I knew now, 2013, you did know of that. You did know. So the people of living, you want to uphold the office of integrity. You're part of the PAM of, prosecutors and upholding the integrity of the office. Is this an integrity? I really don't know. And it kind of makes me question that. And then here's some, the comments that I've read about the backdoor deals between the prosecutor and there's, the assistant prosecutor. There's a lot of backdoor deals, and a couple people have commented on that. These are attorneys.
A lot of people have commented on some of our posts and a lot of the posts. So how's your dad holding up?
My father, he's doing good. He's at peace with God. He's become closer with God. And his, Lord Savior Jesus Christ, and he knows that there's a reason for everything. He does not hold a grudge. He doesn't have anger.
Just the way you've described him, I'm not surprised.
Exactly. He doesn't hold a grudge. He's just basically, it's in the Lord's hands, and it is what it is. And you know what? During the trial, there were two young men that came and listened and sat inside the courtroom. And I didn't know who they were, and they sat in there, and they came out, and I went up to them during a break. They came out, and I said, do I know you, or why are you here? And they were probably about 19 years old, 20, and they said, well, we know your dad. We were in jail with him at Livingston County Jail.
Oh, wow.
And they said, your dad is an amazing man. And he says, I wouldn't be here today, or him, his friend, we wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for your father. And I just started breaking, and he's like, your dad brought us closer to God. Your dad is, just brought us in and helped us through our troubled times in jail. He says, I was heavy into drugs. Your dad got me closer to the Lord and helped me realize that there's more to life. And he goes, I was going to commit suicide, but your dad brought me away from that. He goes, I owe him the world. And he says, there's people in Livingston County Jail that were in the corner that nobody wanted to associate themselves with. He says, your dad would walk up to him, toss a deck of cards on the table and says, hey, you want to talk? Want to play a game of cards? He says, your dad was the only guy that would do that.
Oh.
So, I got teary-eyed. And letter that was received to Mr. Valancourt's office in 2013 I just talked about. Talk about the relationships. Yeah. Well, it was brought to the attention on January 4th. Of 2013, 4 days before the trial. And my dad's attorney brought it up to the judge.
Okay.
And asked her to recuse herself. And it ended up going in front of Judge Reeder. And basically, the Valancourt was in court, but so was Pam Moss. And on page 9, line 20, let me get look at that. Page 9, line 20. And a little bit above it. This is from Miss Pam Moss, the assistant prosecutor underneath Valancourt, and I believe Valancourt was right next to her that day. They say, there's nothing to indicate concern that there may have been the facts of talking about, a relationship between the two cops. And, basically, Pam Moss says, and so in light of all of that, we just really want to get this trial rolling. She says, I see no reason to investigate the relationship. So, Your Honor, we just want to get this trial rolling. Really? That's how you handle a double homicide case? You have a man's life in jeopardy, and you just want to get it rolling? Well, just because you want to get it rolling, Ms. Pam Moss and Mr. Valancourt, this is the mess you're in now. This is the mess, and you could have solved it for yourselves back then. But now, because you didn't, and you wanted to cover it and hide it underneath the rug, it's all there. It's all in facts.
And it doesn't sound like this is not the end of this.
No, and what I also question is, the Attorney General Bill Schuette. He also has the right to, grant my father a new trial. It's right there. They ransacked, the Michigan State Police ransacked the court, the judge's house. They took all the computers. Now,
which costs the taxpayers money.
A lot of money, absolutely.
To replace computers.
Absolutely, exactly, absolutely. With that said, so Attorney Bill Schuette also has the authority and the integrity, if you will, to grant my father's a new trial. Well, I know, why is this taking so long, the investigation? Well, what's interesting is February of 2016, so almost a year prior to all this coming out, I have a picture of here that was an M. They're bringing forth charges to, at the time, the Todd Cursor and Cindy Gamrat, investigation of, their affair, and if there was perjury. Well, yes, indeed, there was perjury. And if I can quote the words of Attorney General Bill Schuette, who's running for governor, and, with that said, it's kind of interesting. Bill Schuette opened his first campaign office in Brighton. It's kind of interesting, isn't it?
Yes,
so,
it's interesting.
Very interesting. Brighton. Why would that be his first campaign office that he opens? And I have that down there in my file. But then it says that these are the words of Bill Schuette, our Attorney General, running for governor. He says, "Not even those who walk in the halls of power are above the law," said Michigan Attorney General Bill Schuette. "Perjury is a serious violation. Misconduct in office are serious violations, and we're prepared to go to court for those two." And so he says, perjury is a maximum of 15 years. He says, "My job as the Attorney General of Michigan is to, uphold the," let me turn it here, I'm the chief law officer of the state of Michigan and enforce the law. So he, talks a big game. But what's also interesting is Bill Schuette, in 2011, creates Public Integrity Unit to ramp up fight against public corruption. So in 2011, he's claiming he's setting up a unit to ramp up against public corruption. So he states, "Corruption scandals have damaged the public's trust in government and left Michigan with a national reputation as a place where businesses wonder who they have to pay off creating jobs." So he's basically saying, he says, Schuette expects the unit to closely work with local, state, and federal law enforcement to uncover and prosecute crimes at all levels of state and local government. Bill Schuette, and he says, his one big quote here, "There will be no more Kwames." So he's running out the fact that he helped with the Kwame Kilpatrick situation, but there's silence from that office too. You have it all right here. I don't understand. I understand that the Judicial Tenure Commission or the Michigan Supreme Court are the only ones that can remove her, but the fact that she's still on the bench ruling cases, there could be a lot of people, questioning her ruling, if you and I were under investigation, of course we're innocent until proven guilty, and unfortunately my dad was not that in court. He was guilty right from the get-go from the jury. But yes, under investigation, you're innocent until proven guilty. Right. So, but you and I would be placed on paid leave.
It got put on desk duty right away when it's broke.
Yes, and then he was able to retire in September
with full benefits
5 years earlier than he should have. And obviously that's kind of raises a red flag. Like, is that because he understands what could be coming down? Why was that allowed? And that could have been avoided. Or there's a serious crime. You have an innocent man's life in prison that you shouldn't be investigating, and come out with this, and nobody's saying anything. And, Vaillancourt wants to say, Prosecutor Vaillancourt, I know he's questioning why we withdrew the motion that we had. We had a motion filed, and I'm going to tell you, we're not running this 6,500 motion strictly on the perjury of Judge Brennan and Sean Furlong. There's more to do, so, there's more to put on that motion. But what the fact is, my dad did not get a fair trial, and you have the right to oversee that. And there's no integrity. And with that said, if I may, there should be some transparency. And maybe we should have a town hall meeting. And I'd invite Mr. Bill Vaillancourt, the prosecutor, to come and talk about his words, and maybe having a little bit of a town hall meeting. And so I welcome that discussion. I'd be more than happy to sit there and...
yeah, they can all come.
Yeah.
Furlong, Brennan,
bring them all. Let's have a town hall meeting. Well, I heard that Brennan likes to hang out at the bars in Brighton, even though this investigation. So, I mean, she can come too. I'm sure she's be more than happy to.
For anybody that's been following the case, which there's a lot of people in Livingston County, I mean, it has been said that this is the biggest political scandal in this county ever. I hope that you guys, share the video once again, Jared, and good luck.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm Denise Watts.